Good evening, pilots and mercs. So we have left off on Battletech, Text Talks Battletech, primer on the clans, and it's only been 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. July. So yeah, it's been a long time. I've kind of pushed this off a little bit, and we're going to get back into it because this is going to be a long one. Let's roll right into the film. All right, Battletech Mechwarrior lore, Text Talks Battletech. You know it, you love it. Fact division. Intermission will end in 8 minutes. I'm kind of, no, Text puts a lot of good stuff, a lot of good Easter eggs into this. I can't. Go get a drink or pee as hard as you can until you make the Oh, Text. Oh, Text. We seem to have an audio issue. That's not good. There we go. Here's a typical response. Can I say whatever I want? They generally stop responding. Yes. Mike's never DM'd it.
Please, Captain, whatever you do, if you kill me, at least don't tell Stella. I don't want her to be at my funeral.
Oh,
he stares at him, and he takes a long pull on a cigar, and he punches him like 12 times in the face.
It's fucking great. Yeah, that's usually how a lot of those tabletop games go, and I can definitely appreciate. Also watch the Star Trek playlist there. I may not do a reaction on it, but I definitely might need to watch some of that because it looks like a lot of fun. And the link is in the description to the video and subsequently Texas channel. So please, if you're into that sort of thing, like I'm pretty sure a lot of you already are, please go watch some of that. Black Pants Legion predates YouTube, has a mayor.
They want to crush a country that doesn't exist.
Fred, please.
Belgium doesn't even exist.
Oh,
Some
what?
decorum, Fred,
Oh,
please.
oh, he's just hanged by a trapeze. That's interesting. The mayor has no power, just Black Pants Legion things. Mike uses audio. A monument, Tex considers himself a monumental fuck up that somehow keeps going. Tex, I feel that on an emotional level, but please, if not for your sake, then for mine, please think better of yourself. You do a great job for all of us here on YouTube and for everyone around you, so please, you're okay. You're doing a lot better than a lot of us in this regard, so keep your head up. The Black Pants Legion disagrees with he's our fuck up. In the army, Mike learned that gasoline is... Well, yes. I wonder how he learned that. He learned that the hammock can go anywhere if you open up the... No! Mike's favorite meal is hot dogs. I mean, don't get me wrong, a chili hot dog is really good. I'm just terrified of Carrie Busy. That is a zombie. Tex has taken 2 vacations, 4 years. The BPL forced him to take both. Yes, and as he should. Mr. Davion started a fundraiser to force him on one. The courtesy flush is one of the most entertaining streams on the inner tubes. Only the cool kids watch it. Tex once made a U-boat art. He was trying to replicate the Matzi. Oh. Well, you actually did a really good job. You did a really good job, Tex. Like, this is... Like, I see what you were... I can honestly see the detail. It almost reminds me of, like, a Picasso painting or something. It's not like the stream. It's like that one picture. I forget which one it was, but yeah. Also, I'm going to turn it down just slightly. Text doesn't care if you steal. Hey. Doesn't mind if a human takes those. The AIs can take their grubby hands or digital fingers. I don't know. Keep their mitts off of Tex's art. Like, we're already having enough problems with everything else. We don't need that. Link in the description. Some call this the Grandpa Text. The real name song is Pink Bikini. And also maybe pay the guy. He'll write you some music. His rates are reasonable. He's cool like that. Let's see. What else to say? Tex's favorite 10 video games in no order. Ooh, let's see this. Mountain Blade. SS 13. I'm not familiar with that one. Arcane. Diablo 2. Based. I need to play that because I played the opening to it, but I've never actually gotten a chance to like really play through Diablo. Fallout 1 and 2. Base choices. I can't really say too much about these two because sometimes those mechanics make me want to throw my controller across the room. I'm not joking. Like, I'm not a controller thrower, but it's from a different era. So don't get me wrong, these two are great games and I respect that. I just have a skill issue. There's a difference. Fallout New Vegas, based just all day, every day. As a trans girl, I can't say look, it's a requirement that you've played this game or at least have some interest in it. Dwarf, I think that's supposed to be Dwarf Fortress. Definitely can get behind that. Not sure. This could be something else, but I'm pretty sure that's Dwarf Fortress, I think. Homeworld, based. Haven't really played it or heard too much about it. Jagged Alliance. I have no idea on that one either. So, really good list here. Mountain Blade being, like, really cool. A few of Mike's favorite games in no particular order. Unreal. See, I played a little bit of Unreal Tournament. I don't quite get it, but, like, it is fun for what it is. Warcraft. I can see that. Just the way that it's kind of gone nowadays, if you're talking like WoW, it's kind of gone downhill. Arcanium. Again, need to play that, I guess, because Breath of Fire 3, no idea on that one. Wolf 3D, played that extensively. Really good game. Quest for Glory, no idea. Tomb Raider 2. I've seen some footage on it. Really good game. Daggerfall. Need to get back into it. Was streaming it, but yeah, need to get back into it. Mike's Tyson's Punch-Out. Heard of it. Not really my cup of tea, but I can respect that. Hitman. Yeah, a lot of good choices here. Also, is that the original Hitman or is that like the newer ones? Because IO made both, so it's really hard to tell sometimes. Is that like the... Forgive me, I think that's the PS1 or like PS2 version they're talking about. Almost certainly. So, a lot of good games here. Tech's favorite game store is Gamers Haven in the Springs. It was its local game store for years. I might need to have a look at that because there are some good game stores like that. Tech's... This goes by so fast. And it's not him. It's just... I get it. You need to pace it for the video, but... Self-discovery. Text refuses. Fair enough. Mike's quotes... to make him rage. Tech's current favorite space show is... Again, I go to read some of this. Oh well, at least it's on screen. Things well done should be removed from any option at steakhouse. Yes. If you are ordering your steak well done, get out. I'm dead serious. Get out. We don't serve your kind here. Oh no, I've done messed up everything just for a bit. But honestly, did we expect anything else? There we go. Okay. Mike didn't know what Battletech was before he started editing these videos. He just said, oh yeah, Robotech. Robotech's cool. Maris's laugh from part 2 is actually Mike. He's really freaking scary. That was Mike. Mike put some ice in a jar of pickle juice and drank it through a straw throughout college. I mean, pickle juice is good. I don't know about the ice, though. Tex reads every comment that he can. Doesn't watch the anime and had to have the word senpai explained. Oh, no. Mike's favorite track episode is not Masks because it's off. When an episode is near completion, Mike and Tex are exhausted. Tex will do his George Lucas impression. It's pretty okay, but it's funny. Mike thinks Nicholas Kerensky's picture looks like Grace Bannon from Johnny Quest. I see the resemblance. Like, I see the resemblance, but this is more Russian. This almost looks more Australian. Like, I'm getting Australian vibes. That's more what I'm getting off this. Like a Steve Irwin sort of thing would be where I'm coming from with that. But maybe I'm wrong on that one. Anna Barbara's gonna sue us for that. Oh wait, they went tits up in 2001. Who? We cool. Mike and Tex have seen all the hot Mars memes from the last two-parter. And we want to say, what's wrong with you? Everything is the internet, Tex. Have you seen? But then we realized, oh, we're to blame. I mean, to be fair, you went with a lot of memes and a lot of Easter eggs and those. Joking, we actually think they're great. Texas concealed carry used to be a custom-tuned 44 Magnum. I think that's really fucking cool, but how the fuck do you conceal all of that massive pistol? I just, again, like, some people are like, oh yeah, I use these massive pistols for concealed carry, and I'm like, how do you fit that into a pocket? Because again, these don't fit in like jean pockets, like even the ones I'm wearing, like technically boys' jeans. Forget trying to put that into, like, if I was to actually wear like if I was to wear women's jeans, good luck fitting a toothpick in there. Texas favorite composers. Ooh. That is a really good list. I see a couple people I recognize in there, not too many. I really tend to be a bit uncultured, and unfortunately the discovery for YouTube does not help. It does not help. It's either between YouTube or Spotify, and it's just like, I have a small, like, glass dome, and that's it. There's no really getting outside of that, other than just pressing. I think I need to do a stream or something where I just sit down and press random, although it'd be copyright struck to hell, so who knows. Maybe I'll just do that in my own time. We're out of facts, so here's text proving you can get more or less the center of mass accuracy while dual wielding magnums. Oh, that is brilliant. Tex has some meaty arms. Oh, yes, he does. Okay, hope you're ready. Movie is starting back up. Yay, movie. Kerensky's Legacy.
After thoroughly surveying the worlds and making as certain as possible they were suitable for
There's
permanent
that sultry
colonization,
voice.
the SLDF fleet began to rapidly shift from survival
And I
in
apologize if
space
that
to a
sounds weird,
dedicated
Tex.
colonization effort.
I just like your
It was
voice.
a fundamental change in mission parameters, so unused equipment, weapons, and warships were placed into storage or mothballs for later use if necessary. Few thought they'd need to touch a weapon in the near future, and for some, the conversion from a military life to a civilian one wasn't exactly a smooth transition. The SLDF...
You have to imagine, these people have been at war for longer than they can start to remember at this point. The American Civil War took place over at least 20 years, something like that. So a lot of these people have been in the service for 2 decades at this point. Some of them don't even remember what caused the start of the war in the first place. Because, as Tex said, the war's been going on for a long time, and trying to adjust to a civilian life after that, good luck. Because your mind works a hell of a lot differently than most other people.
found themselves in a case of turning swords into plowshares, and much formerly military equipment was immediately pressed into service in the name of survival, or cannibalized for parts to keep people alive. However, there was the ever-present issue of manpower. After all, a colony in a delicate balance of survival doesn't need 100 divisions of fighting men and women. Colonies need civilian infrastructure. They were in need of hard work, sweat, and determination focused on making a go at it. And so a fundamental change in the order of things was absolutely necessary for Starleague in Exile to survive at all. Starleague in Exile began to force the majority of the SLDF to test out and become civilians. The controlled demobilization required every member of the SLDF test
a free tractor with every uniform turn in. Corn, the new war. I love how accurate this sort of I love how this sort of propaganda is actually very true. And I use propaganda more lightly than anything else. You're trying to convince these people who have been fighting for 20 years to turn in their uniform and rifle to help out with the farmstead, and you really do have to convince these people, because that's the thing that they've been doing for 20 years and know the best. You fought Amaris. Now it's time to fight boredom and depression. Yeah, I don't think I'd be taking this expedition. I'm sorry. You're going to space in the middle of nowhere to colonize somewhere with no return ticket. Yeah, that takes a whole nother bravery that I'm just like, no, I'm good. Thank you, though.
be forced out. Only the best of the best would stay in uniform, and the rest would become the genesis of a new civilian working class. 75% of the SLDF tested out, from the lowest ranking soldier to the highest ranking general. Only those of extraordinary aptitude, skill, and health were allowed to stay in uniform. The now unneeded vast arsenals of weaponry were placed into stockpiles called Brian caches, paying homage to Starleague's own Castles Brian. Warships were placed into reserve fleets or mothballed around planetary bodies in the event they'd ever be needed in the future. Parts of the fleet lived on, and many of the demobilized SLDF served in a newly established group called the Explorers Corps, who began to chart nearby star systems for habitable worlds and exploitable resources. While the demobilizations were necessary for survival, it seems in retrospect optimistic, or at the very least hopeful, to believe for such a massive change overnight to succeed. Many of these...
I think the massive change from the American Civil War to now, just, you've went through space, kind of wondered if you're ever going to make it to your destination over the past couple of months, if not. like, I'm assuming at least a couple of months to a year at this point. I forget the exact timetable because it's been about a month since I watched the original video, so probably a mistake on my part. But you're expecting these people to just not only switch roles, but now you're expecting them to just kind of step into that new reality and really dig in, because that's the only way that you're going to survive, which is a shock to anybody's system, as a lot of people could tell you, who's went from the military life or just had to move from different places. This is this can be very stressful on people, and I like that that's very much depicted here,
Brave men and women had seen
whether
decades
via
of
attacks or the
horrific
original
combat, all of them
the
deeply
original
bearing
lore.
the scars of their campaigns in some way or another, with most unable to forget the horrors of classed worlds and burning cities, turning most of them into civilians. Forcing them to change their lifestyle overnight was a gamble. While some adapted well enough, many had long ago forgotten how to be civilians, or, in some cases, even civil. People who had suffered through campaign after campaign hardly felt rewarded for being told to now farm and like it. A new life forced upon them, and then with a complete lack of basic amenities, let alone any form of luxury, set the stage for future discontent. For a time, though, the SLDF took to their new lives without much complaint. It was, after all, a welcome reprieve from years of cramped starship living, wandering the cosmos aimless.
Years would be the answer to my question earlier. Fantastic. So not only have you ripped them from their original home, which was glass to bits, you have the horrors of where you dragged them across the galaxy, uncharted galaxy, by the way, in a crimped metal tube to a planet, and that has no amenities whatsoever. And you have to build everything from scratch. At least you get a break from the war, but yeah, that's these people's minds must be absolutely destroyed at this point. Like, I don't blame them for feeling any sort of which way about it, because that is, I don't think most of us would be willing to go on after this. And I have to say that delicately, but like, their homes, their families, everything that they once knew is now gone. And now they're millions of light years away from that, which is mostly why humanity is not even really going to expand that far outside of the known solar system, because the amount of space that you have between here and basically just even like the edge of our solar system would break most people. Hell, living in a glass dome on the moon for 6 months would break most people. There was an old study on that. If I find it, I'll try to put it up on screen. But yeah, no, it's going to be a bad time for everybody.
In the horrors of their now distant past. Kerensky closed the book on the past as best he could by broadcasting toward the inner sphere a final message. The voice of Kerensky broadcast we covered in the Ameris Civil War lecture series.
Yep, I was about to say that.
But it is absolutely worth bringing up again for historical reference as a companion to the Hidden Hope doctrine. The voice of Kerensky message was one of hope, conveying that perhaps one day the inner sphere would not be a place of turmoil, and that future generations may learn to live among each other in peace. Broadcasts.
I love the irony of that message as well, because oh, hey, maybe you can one day be very peaceful and very, very kind and compassionate towards each other. Meanwhile, in the inner sphere, we're blowing each other up 4 times over. 4 different succession wars. And that's not even talking about the civil war between the Federated Commonwealth, the House Steiner, and House Davion. So, yeah, that message is kind of ironic in that way. And I do feel bad for Grinsky here because he's like, hey, I'm trying to do the best I can to keep y'all from blowing each other up. But there is little I can do because y'all keep blowing each other up. And that's not great. We had that stability for a little bit and now it's gone, and I don't want you having weapons of mass destruction. So just going to take all of it this way, which honestly didn't seem to do too much to stop them from blowing up each other, but at least the inner sphere survived to some extent.
September the 9th, 2786, the voice of Kerensky message would take at least 1,000 years to reach the inner sphere on broadband.
Oh, and just for everybody else writing the comment now, there is a double irony because of the clans being developed after this, which we're going to get to shortly, kind of, something like that.
Carrier waves. It was a message of hope, but prudent enough to be sent the slowest means possible. It would be time enough for people to grow up, time enough for people to find a better way. In theory, anyways. By strange coincidence, that very message would only be heard 260 short years later, but that's a whole nother story. For a short time, though, there was indeed peace and prosperity for Star League in exile. Cities were built, houses became homes, people farmed, started families, and did their best to forget their troubles. And folks did their best to start over. In 2800, things began to change. Perhaps it was the age of their leader, as Alexander Kerensky was by this time 100 years old and straining even the life expectancy afforded by the very best in advanced Star League medical knowledge. He'd not had, by any standards, an easy life, and with many long decades of stress, pain, and loss wearing down on him, he was struggling to hold a dream together with zero room for error. He was weighed down.
I'm surprised he made it to 100. Like, this guy's been fighting on the battlefield, commanding an entire strategic command for decades at this point, trying to get the inner sphere to not collapse in on itself. And not only the logistics of that, the stress of that, like just the real idea that one wrong catastrophic move and he's done. And the entire Star League kind of goes with him, because if it wasn't for his sense of duty, the rest of Star League would not have made it in any sort of capacity after the Ameris coup.
Down by his most recent and perhaps deepest sorrow, as just 4 years earlier his wife Katyusha contracted a virus, grown ill, and died. This, when coupled with his advanced age, meant he was unable to tend to Star League in exile with his former vigor. The depressed ancient general couldn't hold the reins of power with the strength he once did, and certainly didn't trust his sons to assume those responsibilities for him. And so, slowly, things began to fall apart. At least that is one interpretation of events. I'm going to give you a different reason for what happened next.
Okay, go for it.
Capellan fuckery.
What? How the fuck did the Compellans have anything to do with this? They're back in the inner sphere. What? Okay.
Let me elaborate. I see the genesis of the problem as that once peace had taken root and people began to muster out of Star League, they had not only cast away their uniforms, but a military mindset without the discipline of a daily regimen, commands to be obeyed, and consequences for disobeying them. Order starts to break down, and a disorderly former SLDF soldier was probably at this point in time the most dangerous thing in the goddamn galaxy.
Yeah.
There's also another overlooked benefit of a uniform, as it is a reminder of which side you're on. when you're in uniform and following a cause. As the
Mhm.
SLDF had up to this point, it didn't matter where you were from or what you thought, so much as what you were fighting for. In uniform, it's easier to overlook the shortcomings of your brothers and sisters in arms because they're part of the same mission as you are. You're looking out for them and they you. The situation may suck, but so long as you're in it together, everyone stands to benefit. It is further worth noting that by design, the SLDF was a multinational, multicultural fighting force for the benefit of the entire Star League, so that not a single house nor personal allegiance was allowed to interfere with the dedication of duty to the state above all.
But let me guess, as soon as they take off that uniform, a lot of those compelling folks had some different ideas on how things are to be
The
run.
Star League uniform, you were fighting for the men and women at your side under the flag you carried, and nothing else really mattered.
Mhm.
But with Amaris long dead, Star League long gone, and now with nothing to do but try to start a new life, people had to define, perhaps for the very first time, what mattered to them most. People being people, falling back on old ways was easiest, and soon old loyalties and a re-emergence of successor state ideologies began to take root. Before
Oh,
long,
no.
relative prosperity and expansionism itself began to drive a wedge between various factions, all eagerly attempting to exploit the same limited resources. And there's something most of you should know by now. Never trust a Capellan.
Well,
because
yes.
their favorite sheath for any blade they have
Is your back.
On a jungle
I love how we both called it at the same time. We both said it at the same time. Oh, might be because I do a lot of backstabbing in a lot of my streams. No, that is not a plug. That is just me. That is me knowing the Compellans very well. However, Draconis Combine kind of sucks a little bit more. So,
world now named Eden. Small-scale clashes, skirmishes, and disorderly riots broke out between colonists of the Federated Suns and the Capellan Confederation. People had by now fallen in line with ideologies carried from the Inner Sphere and banded together to fight those of opposing loyalties. People were initially content to riot and skirmish for a time as old enemies decided to finally hash things out, sadly mirroring events in the Inner Sphere unfolding simultaneously. It can be said that old hatreds die hard, while lawlessness was initially suppressed by those few SLDFs still in uniform and what modest resources they still had available.
but with all of their forces basically being mothballed at this point, there's not going to be too many left for them to stop people from just hashing out
They couldn't
this.
be everywhere
Yeah.
at once. And so, in 2801, open rebellion had broken out. Rebel forces, nearly all of them Capellan, decided to declare independence from Star League in exile in May of that year. They were not merely content to say, "We quit, we're out, thanks for the ride and the colony and keeping us alive, General Kerensky." No. They were intent on making a new state from the ground up and curb-stomping anyone who got in their way. To further this strategic aim, they seized mothballed weapons and equipment from the tremendous arsenals they'd built years earlier to arm their new state and begin fighting their neighbors, folks loyal to the Federated Suns, with everything at their disposal. Being that most of the population was quite familiar with how
something, once an Inner Sphere, always an Inner Sphere. This is, yeah. I'm not surprised that this happened. Like, I was just kind of going, yeah, you've been fighting for 20 years, cooped up in a can for years in space, and now you just want people to just build up a new life and not go back to the old ways of thinking without like setting up some sort of structure, some sort of ideal to go after. Yeah, they're gonna fight. Yeah, they're gonna fight. That's what they know. that's what they know at this point. Like,
How to effectively
I
end warfare,
yeah, I
the
didn't
rebels were not your
think
weekend
this is gonna
warriors
go
playing
any other
games.
way.
With the SLDF being a bare handful of soldiers at this point, peacekeeping efforts soon failed, and the situation rapidly spiraled out of control. Few thought that soldiers who had sacrificed so much would eagerly betray their fellows for territory, resources, and loot, but Capellans will ruin anything, as is their custom. Maybe it was the sirens blaring, or people losing their shit, or just that familiar sense of chaos needing desperate leadership, but the rebellion broke Alexander Kerensky's torpor, pushed back the fog, and brought him back to the front. Yes, 101-year-old General Alexander Kerensky had had enough of this nonsense, and he acted to put an end to this. He dispatched his most loyal SLDF troops, led by his right hand from the American Civil War, General Aaron D. Chevalier,
The goddamn Blackwatch.
Elizabeth Hazen of Blackwatch fame. The
Yep,
objective was to stop the
here we
rebellion from
go.
spreading, to preserve Starleague in exile, and, as necessary, destroy all opposition to good order. They were sent to put an end to this senseless violence and prevent further chaos from spreading in its wake. Eden was a dense, mostly untamed tropical jungle and filled with plenty of spaces to stage an ambush. Capellan forces had dug in deep and prepared the battlefield for the coming onslaught. When the loyalist SLDF forces made landfall, they found that the situation was worse than they were led to believe.
Oh,
Capellans had already done what they do best, which is lay traps and prepare to kill their former allies. As the SLDF forces approached the rebel encampments, Major Hazen's mech fell into a particularly devilish trap. A giant pit of oil that touched off the instant the mech fell in. That's not to say Major Hazen had grown soft, mind you, because Capellans have a PhD in backstab, betrayal, and traps like this. But with no way out and the mech rendered combat ineffective, Major Hazen ejected. Capellans being Capellans, they opened fire on the ejecting Mechwarrior with everything they had. Major
just straight up war
Elizabeth
crimes.
Hazen,
Okay.
SLDF legend, Blackwatch hero, and survivor of the American Civil War, took a heavy caliber slug to the narrow helmet mid-ejection and
He was headshot by a munition as he ejected out of an oil tart pit. That is a hell of a way to go out and sounds very compelling to me. That is unfortunate.
out of the fight. For a few minutes.
Ugh.
Yes, the Blackwatch is that hard to kill. Being shot in the head is a minor fucking inconvenience. When she awoke, head ringing and angry as all hell, she found General D. Chevalier heavily engaged in close combat with the rebels. I have not touched on the brave madness of General Aaron D. Chevalier, one of the most loyal men Kerensky could have ever have hoped for. This was a man, after all, who years earlier was willing to wage war on all of the great houses to restore Starleague. The short version of his career is thus. He was born in the Federated Sons, a survivor of the War of Davion Succession, an elite academy grad, an SLDF hero, and a veteran of the 320th Dragoon Regiment, which was later tragically annihilated during the Hegemony campaign. He was a fierce competitor, and in his youth had placed in the Martial Olympiad of 2736. He was a graduate of the Elite Gunslinger program, the same program that bred the Blackwatch Elite Training Regiment. He led the heaviest fighting in the Third Hidden War. He'd hunted pirates. He made it to Lieutenant General before he even met Kerensky, and rose to Division Commander before the American Civil War even began. He was known
This
as
guy's
being a
got
fearless,
quite the
ceaseless
history.
motivator who tirelessly stood his post, worked as hard as he could, and never gave up. The man had a reputation for being fearless in the face of impossible odds, as he demonstrated by using the sharp, pointy stick of the SLDF Navy to raid Amaris while Kerensky curb-stomped the periphery in Amaris's own.
He was raiding Amaris while General Kerensky is off raiding the periphery. That is insane.
He also knew what it meant to sacrifice for the greater good. Of his 5 children, 2 were killed by Stefan Amaris as they tried to find and protect members of House Cameron. His 2 oldest children died during Operation Chieftain, both having served as SLDF veterans and both having laid down their lives to try to take the hegemony back from Amaris. De Chevalier did not shirk from duty or responsibility, so when the general said make rebels go away, he waded in without second thoughts. So Major Hazen wakes up from a mild case of bullet to the neuro helmet to see an old Star League general with over 7 decades of military service.
I'm genuinely surprised she survived that. Like, how do you survive emissions to the helmet? I thought she was gone.
His atlas. Maybe it was past his bedtime, or maybe he was tired of this nonsense, or maybe he just wanted peace for once. But De Chevalier was thoroughly unamused by this Capellan bullshit and set himself to take care of this problem at point-blank range. And fatefully for him, that is what the Capellans had been waiting for. As he waded in, as some would say, to shield the ambushed SLDF units and buy time for a regroup, the rebels struck with full force. Using the full weight of their infantry, well-placed artillery, and sheer numbers, they overwhelmed the Atlas. De Chevalier didn't eject because to stop fighting and retreat would only endanger his men. He gave his last orders. He stayed at his controls and he went down swinging. They destroyed one leg, they disabled his mech, and he continued to fight like a madman. He was bellowing orders and firing every functional weapon he had, trying to hold back the jaws of defeat with every ounce of his soul. But no man is immortal. With wave after wave of Inferno missiles tearing into the Atlas, General De Chevalier died in a blaze of glory.
And a blaze of glory indeed.
Is the turning point. There was no way back now. A good man killed for no good reason. The uprising, the Amaris Civil War, and now the Exodus had, up to this point, claimed plenty of folks under similar circumstances. During the Amaris Civil War, entire worlds were glassed, put to the nuclear torch for no reason other than it denied Kerensky a staging point. Entire populations had been enslaved, starved, and gassed to prove Amaris wasn't going to go gently. Total war does that to a population. It relegates the act of killing to an industrial scale. And yet, with that war long over, and the trials past, with the hard times now behind them, somehow, the worst of the Inner Sphere had been carried with them on the Exodus to this new frontier and manifested again to wreak havoc. The once mighty men and women of the SLDF were now turning their guns on each other and fighting with the same ferocity.
It's because there's no philosophy in your new government, or just Star League in exile. There's nothing to prop that up for people to look towards and try to achieve. There's just every bit of baggage that they brought with them, flying through space, or just the mind numbing and destroying parts of war is now ravaging your minds. Plus being stuck, like I said, in a spaceship for years trying to get to this destination in the first place. Yeah, this was going to happen.
Used on Amaris. What happened next is only rumored, as rebels didn't get a chance to really write much of a record of that event.
I'm sure not.
I'll get to presently. For with Hazen's fury unleashed, what had been a battle would now be remembered as a massacre. Major Elizabeth Hazen was thoroughly tired of this nonsense. She'd seen too many die. She'd seen too many fall in the line of duty. And this single death had stoked a flame deep in her heart. And this final act of betrayal was a catalyst for her rage. Sources say she emerged from the jungle in fury and grief, and most assuredly about to kick some ass. Perhaps played in her
this is a result of
comrades lost along the way. The Black Watch officer had just finally snapped. What is known is she picked up a sword from a dead Capellan rebel and charged, and she just started cutting people apart. Any Capellan she saw died. Any who ran died tired. Any who begged for mercy found there was none to be had, at least not on this day. Her mad charge on foot with blood in her eyes and sword in her hand, with furious rage guiding it, proceeded to tear through Capellan lines. This insane act of defiance, a mad charge into overwhelming numbers to avenge the fallen, rallied.
I just want to point out, there is some definite thirst traps in Battletech here. Just saying. Like, I realize the context of all this going on, but at the same time, like, I also see what's on screen, so.
The SLDF, because watching a Blackwatch commander wading into a furious gun battle with just a sword, screaming bloody vengeance, was just the sort of thing to spark their spirit. So they joined her, and absolute carnage followed. No rebels survived that battle, or the next one, or the one after that. Hazen didn't just turn the tide of a battle. She went on to annihilate every Capellan rebel she could find on the planet and vowed vengeance on any who dared to stand in her way.
But here's the problem with all that. You wanted to stop all this, so you went into Exodus, and now, without a, like I said, unified cause for your, or standard of living, whatever, or just any sort of support for your people who are now decades messed up. Yeah, all their old baggage is going to come up, and this is just turning into the inner sphere again. Just now the Blackwatch is doing it, and yeah, I see where this is spiraling out of control very quickly, but we'll
Eden's
continue on.
population fell that day, and that particular rebellion was made extinct. But the much diminished SLDF couldn't be everywhere at once. The news of General de Chevalier's death and the chaos which followed emboldened the rebel factions, and soon there was a full-on civil war. Faction after faction seized the moment and declared independence. There was absolute chaos as neighbor turned on neighbor, faction on faction, armed
Yep,
with the sheer
this is
volume
exactly
of
what I thought it
weaponry
was
the
going to
Exodus
turn
fleet had
into.
carried from the inner sphere.
Yep, there's
Everyone
now.
had realized without a unifying SLDF, without a unifying cause, they were out for themselves, and joining one of the many emerging factions was the only way to stay alive. Star League in Exile was now dead, a casualty of desperate people resorting to what they felt was their best option at that point in time. And sadly, there was to be one more casualty. The death of his friend, his ally, his confidant, General de Chevalier, hit Alexander Kerensky hard. He was in the planning stages on striking back at the rebels, but sadly, on the 8th of June 2801, he died of a massive heart attack. The worst of the inner sphere had been carried with him on the Exodus, and then in a moment of strife, manifested among colonies they had founded, and there would be no going back to the brief peace they had achieved. SLDF veterans, at least those who'd not been forced to muster out, those who had only known and chose to maintain a soldier's life, were for the first time truly leaderless. The Star League in Exile was now gone, reduced to a series of factions closely mirroring their inner sphere counterparts. Each faction vying for supremacy were now all too eager to wield the vast arsenals they had stockpiled, and through them began to forge new states for themselves. SLDF commanders in the field either fell in with the factions or died trying to put them down, in what would soon become the Exodus Civil War, in essence a microcosm of the First Succession War. The surviving SLDF leadership remained paralyzed. Each of the remaining generals tried to assert their own claims to Kerensky's legacy, or began siding with one faction or another. But Nicholas Kerensky had his own ambitions. Perhaps it was a result of having lived in his father's shadow all of these years. Perhaps it was watching his father's noble dream die before him. Perhaps it was the cycles of grief and loss he'd seen in the course of his life. His father, his mother, Star League in Exile. All were gone now. But there's another consideration for what he did next. I feel his previous illness had something to do with it. Nicholas had caught the same brain fever his mother had, a disease that wreaked havoc on the early colonization efforts, and known to cause extensive brain damage in its victims.
That's not good.
He fought it for 2 weeks on the verge of death, and yet he'd survived. And I feel that changed him. In the wake of his father's death, Nicholas Kerensky claimed leadership of the SLDF, He didn't see himself as a son of a great man any longer. He saw himself as the heir of a noble ideology, a legacy that could in time save them all. The SLDF and all it represented would be his. He would keep the dream alive. It wasn't the craziest thing to claim. After all, that's Innersphere's standard operations. New boss inherits the job of the old boss. And Nicholas Kerensky saw himself now as a great man, that now was his time. His destiny was laid before him. Most of the division commanders decided to take their chances anywhere else. Most of them had no interest in following the unproven son of Alexander Kerensky in any capacity. Those who didn't laugh in his face politely walked away from his notions of grandeur. You have to try to understand their reasoning. Nicholas Kerensky had not fought as they had in the Americivil War. He knew nothing of command, of war outside of history books. He was merely the son of the great General Alexander Kerensky. The great general.
To his credit, he is trying to take on something that is like, this is the size of the entire galaxy, essentially. Even though the Star League has been diminished at this point, like into exile, he's still trying to carry on that dream that one day that they might return, or at the very least have a functional government. So that's some big shoes to fill, and I don't necessarily blame him. However, this is not going to go well, as it never does in Battletech. But I think the notions are good here, at least for the moment. At least for the moment. When it comes to the clans, though, it's never good. So
was now dead. From their perspective, his noble dream of a Star League in exile had died with him. Many of the veteran commanders of the Americivil War were dead or ancient or fully intent on carving what territory they could as warlords and wrecking their neighbors in the process. With as many weapons, warships, and supplies as they had, there was now no course but war. So why not fight it out? They saw their best option as to throw in with an existing faction and do their best to survive. It was the Innersphere way, after all, joining the son, the presumed heir of a great leader, and trusting his ability to restore order was a leap.
If you want to see the results of that, just have a look at the Innersphere, because they're not doing too well either. They're getting blown back to the Stone Age very quickly.
Leap of faith that few were willing to take at this point. After all, the last leap of faith they'd taken resulted in what promised to be a gruesome conflict and all the ruin that it entailed. But that's not to say General Kerensky's sons were alone. Despite everything up to this point and the hopelessness of the situation, some still believed, fanatically. So Nicholas Kerensky gathered those most loyal to him, or if not him, his father's cause, which he had now assumed as his own. He told them that the Pentagon worlds were now doomed, and that they must commit to a second exodus, to leave all of the factions behind, to leave the poison of the inner.
You want to do a second exodus? Oh yeah, the first exodus went so well. We're just gonna leave these worlds behind and try again. As if the same thing isn't going to happen, but with even more limited resources. I don't know how this is going to go, but sure. Let's
politics
see it.
Behind and start a new society. I ask myself, what kind of people would be willing to walk away from that, to take one last jump, to follow the son of a great leader in pursuit of an ideology not quite clearly defined? Well, people who are dreamers, for one. Nicholas Kerensky may not have been the ideal man for the job at hand, but perhaps the only man remaining with any semblance of a vision. Enough of them did see him as the inheritor of his father's dream. Nicholas, in turn, went to every Pentagon world and made his objective known. He wanted to escape the violence of what was now being called the Exodus Civil War, and to carry the true legacy of Star League onward. He wanted to leave the cycles of tragedy and violence the Innersphere had always known. From the Pentagon cluster, a bare few thousand volunteers joined him, and with what resources they could take, they jumped. They landed on a recently colonized world in the nearby Kerensky cluster. In Russian, it means dream country. To his credit, Nicholas Kerensky later came back to save as many as he could. It was January 2802, Major General Nicholas Kerensky, yes, he'd given himself that.
I appreciate the fact that he went through with the ideology and went back to grab more people to try to at least get out of the situation that they were in. But again, I still feel like this is gonna go back to the inner sphere unless this goes the way that I think it's going to, and they're going to introduce some very interesting ideologies
Accolade,
that
Major
lay
General
the groundwork for the
began
clans.
using the assembled remnants of the SLDF Navy and carefully organized a exfiltration from the Pentagon Civil War of over a quarter of the surviving civilian population to this new world, adding to his meager resources nearly 1 million farmers, merchants, and workers. Further, his forces were bolstered by the majority of the Navy having opted to side with him rather than duke it out with capital-scale weapons over what amounted to a handful of planets and the so-called leaders who are now fighting for dominion over them. However, of the mech jocks, aerospace pilots, infantry, and tankers of the SLDF Exodus forces, only the 146th and 149th Divisions fully sided with him in his dream. From his new vantage point, Nicholas saw the cycles of history were inescapable. Humanity in its current state would endure only occasional peace before solving things the old way. Good old-fashioned warfare vis-a-vis grade A war crimes. He realized that the SLDF had left the inner sphere only to burn new worlds in the name of whatever cause they could drum up. He saw old ways of thinking, inner sphere ways of thinking, to be toxic and a direct contributor to what was now unfolding.
I don't like where this is going, but I do understand where he's thinking about.
This new world had every potential to become a messy battleground in time, unless he were to change everything. He saw that changes were absolutely necessary to prevent a future world from burning what he intended to make. Drastic changes, and not just what a society stood for, but the very fabric of society itself. What if he were to change the balance of a society, its aim, governance, and focus? The old ways to him were flawed as they gave into biases, beliefs, and allegiances, which inevitably resulted in mutual annihilation, and he saw himself as a great man, the father of a new nation, guided by righteous ideologies given to him by his father. He was precisely the individual to forge a new civilization to correct the flaws of the old. And so, in the name of his father's legacy and in his own avowed belief in the nobility of Starleague as an ideology, he reshaped the world from the top down. He saw himself as prime architect of this new world, and this would be a new society, free of cultural bias, of prejudice, of backward belief systems, and any allegiance to the old ways, or as he saw them, backward thinking. Nicholas envisaged a new society founded principally on meritocracy, not the inherited power dynasties of the inner sphere, but it would be a divisive society by the warrior elite, the best, the bravest, and brightest that they had. Being a bit of a madman, perhaps as a result of his earlier mental trauma, serious illness, or just zealous belief in his own wisdom, he borrowed ideas from history that fit his vision for a utopian society. Upon closer examinations, it would be clear that he'd taken policies and governance designs from various powerful factions of ancient Terran history, from the Mongol hordes to honor-bound shogunate-era Japan, and even the strict totalitarianism of the 20th century Chinese state. Using these
this
ideas,
is gonna be fun.
he created a template for a brave new world, one which would hopefully allow for the old ways of the inner sphere to be finally buried. He'd split his chosen people into 20 organized units, which he soon called clans. For each of them, he would choose a totem he felt represented
Roll credits, by the way. Rari to the
a
clans.
facet of their identity. They went along with this as, after all they had lost, they were united in one thing principally at this point: faith. And wearing the mantle of his father's legacy, he would shape that faith into what followed. At the heart of each clan was a reinforced Mechwarrior battalion of 40 warriors. Of the thousands and thousands of troops who had joined his exodus, he rigorously tested each warrior on their abilities to allow only the very best to continue to bear arms. This was to be a meritocracy after all, and a warrior society to boot, for in his eyes none were nobler than a warrior bearing arms to defend the society they led. He felt the army structure of the SLDF was deeply tainted and did away with lances, with standard military organization and hierarchies. He dreamed up a new way to fight, a new way to wage war, far from the perceived barbarism of inner sphere practices.
See, that's good that you're coming up with different ways of warfare. However, as the inner sphere and the clans would prove later on down the road, nobody technically has to respect that way of warfare. So, in a vacuum, this is a good idea. Outside of a vacuum, however, these ideas do not work. Not as well as you would hope, but see how it goes.
The new organization was fairly simple, using schoolyard rules of arithmetic. 5 Mechwarriors made a star, 2 stars a binary, 4 binaries a cluster, several clusters to a galaxy. Rank structures were similarly reformed. There was to be, in theory, at least no more militaristic glorification of the individual, no grand reward for being an exceptional individual, save for being tested again and again.
Yes, the clans played American football. There was, I think it was Clan Ghost Bear that played football for their trial of possession for the planet when they started invading the inner sphere. Again, this is way down the road, but still, I think it's interesting that he brings it up here.
In order to attain a higher level of responsibility,
I think you might have mentioned it before,
and
actually.
further to ensure you were worthy of keeping that position. Only the very best would do for his ruling elite, regardless of their life up to that point. Only the ability to excel on the field of combat was important for what would become a warrior caste. Yes, Nicholas Kerensky was intent on saving the society of the inner sphere by imposing a caste system. The warrior caste would be a ruling elite made of the sharpest minds, the strongest bodies, and the most exceptional talents in the conduct of war, set against each other in continual trials. To allow only the strongest to endure would form a society of seemingly peerless combatants. I will say that admirably enough, Nicholas Kerensky submitted to these rigorous trials himself and excelled enough that by June of 2815, he had declared himself Il-Khan, supreme leader of the clans. At least
I appreciate he might add a bit more context that might change my idea on this, but I'm glad that he submitted himself through all this. Like, he wasn't just like, oh, these are the rules for the entire government, but I'm not going to follow them. So at the very least, he put himself through it and actually succeeded. So I at least give him credit for that.
that's what their history says.
Oh, what the history
I
says.
must note again that he had a hand in writing. Now,
A history that he had a hand in writing. Well, yeah, okay. Well, I think that's where that context comes in, because so far he doesn't quite, like, some of these ideas are off kilter, but like, at least I don't know. I don't know what to say here, because it's like he had a hand in writing the history, yes, but like, it's not completely bad. Like, he's not a bad person. It's just the way this is all going to end up. But oh well.
with 20 clans of 40 warriors each, initially that covers 800 individuals. They were, as the ancient Terran saying goes, the cream of the crop. This warrior class was the
Oh,
result of generations of horrific warfare, and they were as hardened as humanity could provide. And while a ruling warrior elite was established, the question arose, what about the rest? There were a million civilians wondering what the hell they'd just gotten themselves into, fleeing from devastation and thankful to at least be alive. They were willing to put up with some changes, but Nicholas Kerensky had plans for them as well. Other castes would soon follow, but he had more pressing issues at the moment. Survival chief among them. So by 2821, 19 years and change after the second Exodus, and 4 short years after establishing himself as supreme ruler of this new warrior society, he decided that it was finally time to fix the issue of the worlds he'd fled. The Pentagon worlds would be the first major trial for his new society. To gain resources, to save face his father's legacy, and prove the legitimacy of not only his leadership, but of the society he'd engineered. He wanted to take back the Pentagon worlds, reclaim the entire forces of the Exodus, and impose this new society upon them. This plan became known as Operation Klondike, and it was a terrifying success. Namely because the extensive preparation, intelligence gathering, and endless battle drill of Nicholas Kerensky's forces. The fighting forces of these new clans had drilled, fought, and competed against each other endlessly in war games that were at times bloody contests between combatants over who was the ultimate warrior that day. For years, endlessly, they had drilled, testing themselves against each other in every possible manner. With every trial undertaken, they were preparing for a full test of their abilities on the fields of battle to come. As Nicholas Kerensky's forces exhaustively prepared themselves for conquest, the Pentagon worlds had waged war among themselves over what dwindling resources remained in the name of whatever heathen cause they could dream up. The Exodus Civil War continued in a brutal fashion.
Oh, it definitely is.
In the wake of the second Exodus, the survivors of the Pentagon worlds had battled each other without major pause for 20 years. After ferocious conflict, they had generally mismanaged their own situation to the point they were about to collapse. They fought each other with the same relentless ferocity currently unfolding in the inner sphere.
So basically, they had a 20-year blitz for what the inner sphere is going through. Fantastic.
The first succession war.
Although, to be fair, the inner sphere did come back from that, but only because of the Hell Memory Core. There is a couple of other things. I'm simplifying it a little bit, but like between the Hell Memory Core and a bunch of other things, that's kind of what saved the inner sphere to a large extent. There were other cores, of course. I'm not saying it's just the one, but like if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have some of the technology that we do today. So between that and I guess taking from the clans later on, that too, but still.
In all but scale. Every weapon at their disposal was being used to the fullest of its capabilities. The veterans of the SLDF had fallen into old habits, and using the skills they developed during the American Civil War, they nearly burned each other to cinders to fight for marginally habitable space. Kerensky had up-to-date intelligence on the exact condition of each Pentagon world from refugees, and from traders now plying the space lanes. And his own vast naval forces reactivated for the invasion itself. 5 separate fleets were sent out, one for each Pentagon world. They would observe and report the situation in detail. Reconnaissance was conducted in phases, and from listening posts clandestinely placed in system, all colony activity was recorded in detail and broadcast back to Ilkhan Nicholas Kerensky. The clanners plotted the location of all colonial vessels, all spacecraft both active and derelict.
I think it's crazy that we're already up to the clans.
Thoroughly analyzed to get a better read on the situation. Slowly, through passive signals intelligence and direct observation, fleets got an exact picture of what was happening. And most importantly, where to strike. Battle planning was exceptionally thorough. Each of the 5 Pentagon worlds would have 4 clans assigned to invade and hold them. The invasion itself was the first clan blitzkrieg, and in essence a true test of Nicholas Kerensky's new society. This operation would showcase what they had learned, as well as the leadership, vision, and wisdom of Nicholas Kerensky. They had cast off the old ways, choosing to devote themselves to the legacy of Kerensky and the dream of a better world. But would it help them here and now? It is worth noting that at this point the survivors of the Exodus Civil War piloted barely functional equipment. And while the scale of the Exodus Civil War may have been small, considering it was a small population to start with, it is worth weighing that with the sheer amount of combat experience common throughout the population contained within the Exodus, coupled with the disproportionately immense amount of firepower at their disposal, the casualty numbers were accordingly horrific. The Exodus Civil War had destroyed roughly half the population and reduced the former colonies to total ruin. That's not to say Nicholas Kerensky's...
That is insane, but it is basically intersphere warfare, so what did you expect? Also, that catapult looks so good. That looks like a catapult with a raven torso. I'm being told that is the OG catapult, so fair enough.
Conquest of these worlds went without significant effort or casualties. The stakes were...
Don't get me wrong, by the way, the catapult looks really good. It's just like some of the unseen or like the old, like the OG Battletech designs were a lot different than what we normally see today. So for me to be like, that looks kind of like a raven. I'm basing this off of some of the newer designs, which both are canon, but it's really damn confusing sometimes when you go looking at the lore and go, that's a completely different shaped torso than I'm used to, but I get it.
His numbers were limited, but this was an ultimate test of an ideology, and if they failed, their belief system would be proven insufficient. And no doubt the survivors of that would, in fashion, turn on each other.
A rare example of a frontline catapult not dying. Well, okay, here's the thing. That's not a K2 catapult, which wouldn't be around for a while longer, but I don't think so anyways. That looks like it's running an LRM-15. Like, what are you doing up here? Like, again, I realize I'm overanalyzing an illustration, but text pointed out, so now I gotta say something. What are you doing with an LRM that close? Unless, looks like you're firing at soldiers, so maybe you're firing infernos. Who knows? But I would not want to be in a mech. I would not want to be in a catapult that close to the front lines.
If they succeeded, however, they would forge a stronger society than they had ever enjoyed since leaving the inner sphere. The outcome of this invasion would also shape their history in other ways. As stated, it would demonstrate that the new way of organization and thinking trumped the old ways, which had, as demonstrated, significantly weakened their enemies. Secondly, the clans who did well in proving themselves through the invasion would be in positions of significant strength to bargain for additional territories, new worlds in the Kerensky cluster, or additional resources from what they captured. But those clans who'd suffered during the invasion or failed to completely accomplish their objectives would be left weakened, and weakness was not something the new world would allow. While the invasion and liberation of the Pentagon worlds was overwhelmingly a tactical success and a further masterstroke of planning and preparation, it was during this time that the clans would suffer a significant loss. Andrei Kerensky died on the 1st of December 2821 in an ambush. Alone, he stood against a reinforced lance, and while he gave a good showing, he was slain by repeated deliberate shots to his cockpit. With his death, one of the few people who could have shaped the clans in any meaningful way, or at least served as counterbalance to the doings of his brother Nicholas, was now dead. Some would suggest that Nicholas arranged the ambush to be rid of his brother, so that he and he alone could steer the clans. The truth of that is some matter of dispute. It is of historical note, however, that one of the greatest lasting influences on clanner society would be a matter of linguistics. To this day, clanners say af instead of affirmative and neg instead of negative. This was a habit of Andre's from his youth, something he passed on, and clanners still keep alive.
That they do.
Post-subjugation, civilians that were liberated by these elite warriors were at first thankful for the fighting to be over. They were impressed
I love
by
the census scale here, what with a mech, and then just everybody else here kind of puts it into perspective, like, because normally you'd see these battle mechs just on, like, in jungles or just by themselves, isolated from anybody else, but it's nice to see them kind of integrated into the setting a little bit more.
leadership
Depicted that way
and display of
anyways.
firepower, and they were further grateful that the clanners hunted down the most savage and cruel warlords of the Exodus Civil War and brought them to swift, if brutal, justice. As a curious observation, it is worth noting that the people he liberated hailed Nicholas as his father, as he bore a striking physical resemblance to the great man. Then again, Nicholas had tried to emulate his father in many ways, not leastwise his appearance, as he piloted an Atlas II, where his father had originally led from the front in an Atlas in the early stages of the Ameris Civil War. But it is no great surprise that people mistook him for his father. It had been near 20 years of horrific genocidal conflict that had muddied people's perception of history. All they knew was Kerensky was central to all of this. A Kerensky had led them out here, now a Kerensky was saving them. In light of their liberation and being saved from ruin, they saw Nicholas as the fabled savior Kerensky. And rather than correct these people's misconceptions, he chose to say nothing. Perhaps this fed his ego, or he truly saw himself as an inheritor of his father's greatness, ideology, and power, passing out food and supplies, bringing law and order, and mostly a new way of life, away from what these people had suffered. He slowly managed, in effect, to become the salvation these people so desperately needed. What follows next feeds into that, I believe. Unlike many conquerors throughout history, Nicholas Kerensky had planned for this moment. One of his first acts was to admonish the people, giving them his father's General Order 137 again. Some of them had forgotten about that in the intervening years of warfare. As education took a back seat to the needs of basic survival, he offered them the words of his father as more than a historical article of importance, though, but more as an article of faith. Nicholas Kerensky didn't just read his father's general order, he applied it to their current situation as one might a parable or guiding piece of philosophy. He preached to the people, interpreting his father's general order as a prophet might signs from heaven. He told them to grow and mature and to act in every way to eliminate the greed within them that had driven them to this path of destruction. He gave the people his father's words as gospel and offered through them a path to
I don't
salvation.
like the way that
He
it's
offered
being
them a road of
phrased
honor,
like that.
a belief system, a path that could transcend the misery they had inherited if they tried hard enough. He promised them a future they could take ownership of, and that, one day, when all was well, as his father had dreamed, they could return to the inner sphere and restore the peace of Star League once and for all. And that was something they could believe. After everything they had endured and all of their suffering, it was what they felt was the wisest course of action. This unifying gospel of Kerensky, this renewed belief in their purpose and a new way of life would give meaning to them. And why not? After all, Kerensky was their savior at this point. But first they had to tear away the last vestiges of the old world, the old ways. Any remnants of the corrupting, destructive inner sphere ideologies had to be left behind if they were to move forward. By Nicholas's interpretation of his father's wisdom, inherited from father to son, they quickly destroyed all that remained of the old world in any meaningful references to it. They filled their minds with devotion to personal and by extension clan growth. Nicholas Kerensky took the concentrated remnants of the Exodus Civil War and scattered them among the Pentagon worlds so as to never again allow people to congregate along political or cultural lines. And the people obeyed. They were traumatized by the Ameris Civil War, the Exodus Civil War, and were by now tired of suffering. People's resistance had been completely beat down to a point that they were willing and ready to accept anything that promised a potentially happier tomorrow. Kerensky began shaping his new society as their leader and prophet of his father's wisdom, and communicated his directive often as much through extensive writings and directives. His process was to take the written and recorded words of wisdom from his father and draw from them unique interpretations which would then be applied to this new civilization.
See, I appreciate the fact that he gave them an ideal to work towards, and I think, again, in a vacuum, this is good, but we're going to see how that's applied over time, because I feel like this is both good and bad. But I do appreciate how, like, realistic this could potentially be. You know, it is grounded in some sort of reality, so I do appreciate how this has played out so far.
For example, General Alexander Kerensky's SLDF primer, 12 Principles of Command, is more or less the foundational blueprint for the clan's internal bidding process for combat war trials and testing. General Order 137, as interpreted by Nicholas Kerensky, is the basis for the clan justice system. His shaping of society didn't stop there. Over time, he became not only a preacher for his father's vision, but a prophet of its wisdom. From the writings, orders, wishes, and publications of General Alexander Kerensky, his son Nicholas wove the tapestry of a new society. The changes to this new world would become increasingly radical as the last vestiges of the inner sphere were swept away.
That's what I was afraid of.
Into the dustbin of history.
Yep. Okay. So this is the end of part 1. There is about 10 more minutes worth of some of the stuff that Tex goes over, like Tex is working on, that sort of thing. I do want to include that, but I do appreciate how a lot of what I was thinking was kind of put in as far as like the clan's ideology is put forth. It's so eerie to hear some of what Alexander Kerensky had put forth, and then watch as Nicholas kind of twists that a little bit, just like some of the Terran ideas to get into this new society. But at the end of the day, it's grounded in such reality, and like it's like the natural order of things. So it's like it makes a lot of sense as to why you would eventually get here. And I think for the time it was a good idea, but now, like, seeing some of the repercussions of that sort of society and where that goes, it's interesting to look at philosophically. But I'd like to see what Tex has.
And where precisely those choices would invariably lead is something we'll have to get to next time on part 2 of this lecture series.
Yep,
So
there's gonna be
for
more
now,
parts.
class is dismissed, and we will close the book on the clans for now and
You dare refuse my bachal?
pick up next time, next lecture. Remember that this will be on the test, and for the love of God, stay away from the clown on the station. He's not haha funny. He's more a Pagliacci on bath salts.
Oh, shoot.
Your puny cadets are no match for elemental clan warriors.
The glorious Draconis Combine Office of
私
Intelligence.
たちは侵入者に対してあらゆる予防策を講じてきました。半径25マイル以内で私たちに正当な敬意を払わなかった者たちは
We destroyed everybody within a 25-meter radius that looked at us weird.
待機し、戦争計画を妨害しようとする暗殺者、スパイ、または愚か者を破壊する準備ができる。
この音楽は
Oh, it's a light scout.
Diesem gottlosen Haufen Keratanern zu zeigen, wie Kriegsverbrechen wirklich aussehen. Klärt ein neues Grab für sie auf.
Yes, just some light reconnaissance of the Draconis Combine space. God, that's not frightening at all.
Tonight
Oh.
on WBPL 76.
News, probably.
WBPL 76 presents Community Service Theater. Duncan Fisher
Community
in
Service
William
Theater.
Shakespeare's Macbeth. That's right. Thanks to the court settlement, we have Duncan Fisher as Macbeth. And I do mean that literally. He's every role.
Are appearing to...
Hello, everybody.
George.
This is Duncan Fisher. I'm doing Macbeth. Sure. Let's pick it up where I left off. Methought I heard a voice cry, "Sleep no more! Macbeth does murder sleep. The innocent sleep. Sleep that knits up the raveled sleeve of care. The death of each day's life, sore labor's bath, balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's feast. Speaking of, if you want a feast in life, you want to order Mech-Pale. Fits into any mech cockpit, then holds as much food as you can eat.
That is terrifying. Fucking pterodactyls just looking at me like, I want to consume you instead. Also, this is something a Maris would love.
And boy, is there a lot of it. It's just chock full of vitamins and things.
You dare
Now with
refuse
less
my
chalk.
meal?
Mech-Pale, from the makers
Just
of
that.
Bag of Glass and Box of Farts. yeah, fucking sweet. I ace that shit. Reminds me of this one time where I was in the Valhalla Club getting totally tanked, and this guy came in and he
That's
just...
not the end of the play. You can't go off script. This is only Act 2.
What? Act 2? Jesus Christ, how long is this piece of shit? It's a tale told by an idiot. Wait. Don't I get to stab anybody else? This thing's boring as hell. All the cool shit happens off screen. Who wrote this anyway?
William Shakespeare, Jesus Christ, just stick to the script.
I cast Fireball.
Oh God, why is this happening?
Hey, Discount Dan here, and let me tell you about my new business. Discount
Ooh,
Dan's
it's
pretty above
Discount
what House of
Dan.
Bargains. Why'd I call it Discount Dan? It's pretty above what House of Bargains? Because if you call it Discount Dan's big old pile of rusted broken shit, nobody shows up. Nobody. Not even the people looking for the mountain of cocaine that surely doesn't exist under the pile. Or does it? I don't know, but I'm passing the savings on
We
to you.
don't know.
Let me tell you
We
what I
don't
got in this
wanna know.
pile. I got all sorts of things that I bulldozed out of the Steiner arena. All sorts of things. Mech parts, mech seats, mech decals, mech rust, genuine mech rust. And it's all sold by the pound. By the pound.
Get your discount 3 Urbies and a trench coat today.
Can you imagine what you might find? This is genuine, grade D scrap that may or may not contain the barely conscious remains of Mechwarriors too stupid to eject, but don't take my word for it.
Yeah, just host it. I'll be fine. That's what you normally do anyways, right?
I found a needle with my foot. I need a doctor.
There's this guy dragging himself out of the pile. The Discount Dan just dragged him back and said, "Not so fast, fucko. I think he needs to go to the hospital."
I found this really cool boot, but there's a foot in it. There was a really cool piece of metal that...
Yep, just scrape out the meat and you'll be just fine.
said Clan Snake Cobra, and you know, Discount Dan helped me put in my truck. Then he drove away in my truck, and I kinda want it back.
Look at those fine, satisfied customer testimonials that I didn't record without their knowledge. Good job, people, for saying words with your mouth holes. Speaking of mouth holes, boy, do I have some greasy porn straight from Canopus.
You have stuff from... What stuff do you have? Because I might be interested. This illegal broadcast has been censored by Comstar. Elimination teams have been dispatched. You're welcome.
I fight my enemies because that's what I'm paid to do. I never hesitate to act or even think it through. I retire any day, but I spend too much.
This is for the purpose parody or education. TLDR, don't sue Tex. Tex has no money. This is the work of opinion from an asshole. You've been warned. Tex is just a voice that likes whiskey. Truth.
guess I'll drop once more.
This has been, every time I sit down and record one of these, I wonder why I don't get to these sooner, but these are an experience, okay? These are an experience. It is a movie, and we love it.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, I just hope I can get by. Glory, glory, I just wish they'd pay me more. I guess
George
I'll
fucking
drop once more.
Ledox as Duncan Fisher. As Tex as, you know, Ace Timberwolf as Cretans, all of them.
I might not drop once more.
If you're upset or disappointed at any of this, remember, you paid for it, so this is all your Tex, editor who eats hot dogs and don't we all? Don't we all? Like I said, these are an experience, and while I probably should do these a little bit more often, I do want to give these the time of day that they need.
I just wish they'd pay me more. I guess I'll drop once more. My family is buried, and my homeworld is ablaze. I do not see the irony as one more town I raise. I've lost sight of all revengeance, greed, lust, and
Don't mind me just vibing to the absolute banger of a tune over here.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, I am blessed to be alive. Glory, glory, let's all fight another war. Let's all just drop once more. The client didn't tell us what we would be fighting for. And all I know for certain is I will not die from the poor. In other words, I'm just another fucking dog of war. I'll gladly drop once more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die.
Glory, glory, to be alive. Glory, glory. War. So just drop once more.
Never trust compellents or anything they say. They'll always stab you in the back just to get their way. The only thing that's worse is their shit substandard pay. I guess I'll drop once more.
Glory, glory. The way to die. Glory, glory. Glory, glory. More. Once more.
I fought my way through 49 and even 52. With no fucks given, you'd be surprised by what you can do. And when the shit has hit the fan, you know who'll fight your war. Just pay me to drop some more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a
way to die. Glory, glory, to be alive. Glory, glory. Another war. Once more.
I've murdered filthy pirates and a few compellents. I've stomped on goddamn clanners and survived to tell it true. If there's one thing that I'm counting on, it's never been bored. I'll gladly drop once more.
Glory, glory. Way to die. Glory, glory. To be alive. Glory, glory. A war. Drop once more.
I've been paid in every coin that's ever known to man. I'll fight for any reason because that's frankly who I am. Plausible deniability is what you pay me for. Fuck you, pay me more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a
way to die. Glory, glory. Be alive. Glory, glory. Another war. So let's drop once more.
When you're a mercenary, there are seldom lasting rules. Those who choose to live by them will often die as fools. War crimes may just happen unless you choose to pay me more. I'll always drop some more.
glory, glory. A way to die. Glory, glory. Be alive. Glory. Another war. Let's drop once more.
I've raised some noble houses, companies, and even schools. I'll mortar fucking orphanages with the latest of the tools. I'll raise entire cities because that's what I'm best known for. Pay me to drop some more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a
way to die. Glory, glory. Be alive. Glory, glory. Another war. I'll just drop once more.
I am a problem solver. I just use some different tools, from AC-10s to LRMs and anything that's cool. I'll shoot your enemies and charge you by the fucking war. Send me to drop once more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die.
Glory, glory. Be alive. Glory, glory. Another war. I'll just drop once more.
From Solaris to Decayan, I have seen a thing or two. And across my vast career, I know there's one thing that is true. It ain't required to know just what the hell you're fighting for. I'm just gonna drop once
more.
Glory, glory, what a
hell of a way to die. Glory, glory. Be alive. Glory, glory. Another war. I'll just drop once more.
What in the cinnamon toast fuck is
Fucking compellence. All right. Nope. No more. That's enough for one day. Again, another big thank you to Tex. The link will be in the description to their channel, or at least the video. I want to say thank you to all of you marvelous pilots for watching to this point, but mostly you're watching for Tex, and I get that. I'm more than happy to show yet more people the glorious works of Tex and the Black Pants Legion and all of those hardworking editors. We see you and we appreciate you. But I want to say thank you once again to everybody. This has been Call Sign Onica, signing out.